Apologist William Lane Craig from Reasonable Faith recently addressed an atheist. He responded to her video that detailed her 3 reasons why she's an atheist, and he did so in an extraordinarily polite and cordial manner. It was a very stark reminder about why I'm not an apologist per se. At least I don't try to address any direct responses to people simply because I don't have his patience. I have not been blessed, at least as of yet. I have not been blessed with the patience to deal with atheists. I just think they're dumb. With that said, he took the time to address them, and he did a very good job of that. Though I do want to counter one of her arguments. Let's play his video first, William Lane Craig's video, and then I'll address the atheist.
3 reasons, among many, that I am an atheist. Have you ever noticed that most people are the religion of their parents? You'd think that if there was one super obvious religion, then everyone would have converted to that by now, but instead most people are the religion that their parents are affiliated with. If there is a God, then he must be a really horrible person. It's not uncommon to hear believers say, "Oh, God saved my baby, what a miracle," even though that same God is completely ignoring all of the babies dying in extreme poverty across the world. It seems to me like God favors those who already live in affluent societies who have access to great medical care. But if you bring this up to believers, they'll say some nonsense about how God has to test some people. There's also just no evidence that God exists. And sure, I've heard tons of personal anecdotes about miracles and seeing things that couldn't be explained, but to me, every time I hear a story like that, there's always a more logical explanation for the phenomenon. Some say the human body is evidence that God exists, but it's riddled with design issues. We get addicted easily, our eyes are too weak, we need surgery constantly, and before modern medicine, women died in childbirth all the time.
Well, now, these comments by this young woman are thoughtful, I think, and deserve a serious response. She presents 3 arguments in favor of atheism. Now, the third of these, I think, is the most important, but also the most vulnerable, and that is that there's no evidence for the existence of God. And here I think it's very evident that she's simply not informed very well about the arguments for God's existence. She doesn't seem to have any understanding of things like the cosmological argument, the teleological argument from fine-tuning, the moral argument, the ontological argument. Instead, she appeals to purported miracles or strange phenomena that people have seen. And I would encourage her, therefore, to take a look at and interact with some of these arguments for God's existence. I've defended at least 6 such arguments that I think constitute a powerful cumulative case that God does exist. These are available on our website, reasonablefaith.org, or if she prefers to look at videos, I'd invite her to watch some of the videos that I've had of debates with atheists, like Christopher Hitchens and others, and see which way the evidence points. Now, as I say, this is the most important of her 3 points, because if, in fact, there is good evidence for God's existence, then her other 2 points just become difficult questions, just perplexities, but not really proofs that God doesn't exist. For example, she says that most people adopt the religion of the society in which they were raised. Well, that's certainly true, but this isn't an argument for atheism. At the very best, this would be some sort of argument for inclusivism or accessibilism, that the knowledge of God is accessible in various religions throughout the world. And that's an internal debate among theists, the degree to which salvation or the knowledge of God is accessible in different religions. It's not an argument for atheism. She's just made a category mistake. Now, with respect to someone being grateful that their baby was spared in an accident, I've always found this to be a rather odd sort of complaint by non-believers. If your baby alone was spared and it was God's will that the other babies die, shouldn't you be grateful? Why would you not be grateful that he spared your child, even though the others were taken? It seems to me that a response of gratitude is entirely appropriate. Now, of course, if she's thinking that the sparing of your child is meant to be evidence for God's existence, then she's quite right. That wouldn't be a very good argument for God's existence, but that's not the way it's intended. Instead, this is meant to be an expression of one's gratitude that one's child was saved. Now, if she's simply talking about the problem of suffering and evil, well, that is a perennial question. And here I think the atheist faces a real difficulty. Namely, she would have to prove that the suffering in the world is either impossible or highly improbable given God's existence. And that places a burden of proof on the atheist's shoulder that is so heavy that no atheist has ever been able to bear it. And this is especially relevant if there is good evidence for God's existence. If we have good reasons to believe that God exists, then it isn't all that surprising that we shouldn't discern the reasons for which he permits each and every instance of suffering in the world. Rather, we can trust him and his goodness because we have good reason to believe in the existence of God. So I don't think she's done a very good job of providing a positive argument for atheism. At most, she's just left us with some tough questions to ponder, but those questions themselves don't provide any reason for thinking that God doesn't exist.
Like I said, I don't have William Lane Craig's patience. He's very good at this, and I appreciate him. I appreciate what he does to try to spread the word, bring the faith, and bring people into a cordial, polite. I don't know. Again, not for me, but I do want to address one portion of the young lady's video that really chapped my khakis. Here's the portion.
It's not uncommon to hear believers say, "Oh, God saved my baby, what a miracle," even though that same God is completely ignoring all of the babies dying in extreme poverty across the world. It seems to me like God favors those who already live in affluent societies who have access to great medical care. But if you bring this up to believers, they'll say some nonsense about how God has to test some people.
So that is a classic example of a straw man argument. She is arguing against a point that nobody ever actually makes. She says that if you ask Christians, Christians about the babies dying, that they'll say, well, some people have to be tested. Nobody says that. Nobody says that. I mean, again, she's just creating a counter argument so that she can, I don't know, sort of maybe sound smarter. I don't even know why she would do that. As far as the testing goes, sure, people are tested. We are all tested all the time. Life itself can be argued is a test. It's a test of our faith, of our obedience, of our love for our Creator. And therefore, I guess to some extent she's correct, but it's not like events happen as a result of some sordid desire to test us. That did happen one time in the Bible. That was Job. Job was tested by the adversary, or at the hands of the adversary, and of course he passed those various tests very nicely, and it was an extremely important book. I would recommend everybody go back and read Job, not just about Job's responses, but also obviously the clarity that is delivered by God in the book. With that said, I'm not going to debate her or argue her point. I just want to express the need to not engage against straw man arguments. It can be tempting. We want to win arguments, but I've found that one of the reasons that I don't like to get into apologetic debates is because nobody ever wins. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a debate where one side is swayed either direction. And it's not just them. I used to think, well, but you got the audience. And no, it's just these debates are designed so that one camp can cheer on their person, and the other camp can cheer on their person, and then they can debate at the end about who won the debate. It's debating about the debate. It is what it is. I am, however, a very big fan of spreading the word, spreading the gospel, making disciples of the nations. And these are the things that we are called to do, not necessarily through debate with those whose minds are already made up, but with people that we meet. There are many people, I would argue maybe most people that we see on a daily basis have questions. These people they're not sure what to think about this or that. And I'm not suggesting that we have all the answers. Clearly we don't. But we have some of them. And sharing those answers with those in need, I think that's one of the most important things we can do on a day-to-day basis.
Well, that's an interesting point. What are you, a monk?